Good evening, Britannia, and hello to the rest of the world. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Maya Tusi, and this is your latest news update from the United Kingdom. Segregation, political isolation, and division continues as the so-called British Parliament that was built on the foundation of Christian values and a Christian constitution is being undermined by the opposing views. Now, this is no longer about diversity. This is about the threat coming from opposing values that completely contradicts the Christian cultural values that we have in this country. So in this video, we're going to go through the impact and influence of the new Islamic MPs who have been elected in 2024, in addition to the existing ones, and what they've actually been up to since they were elected. So we're going to go through all this, and we're going to get your reaction during the show. Let's get on with it. All right, let's start by talking about the constitution. So whether we like it or not, we don't have separation of powers in this country. I mean, on a practical level we do, but not constitutionally. Church of England is in charge in terms of the constitution. It's the savior, the protector of the constitution. I'm not talking about people at the top of church. I'm not talking about these woke churches with rainbow flags on top of them. I'm talking about the actual foundation. Now, everything that we've had, all the progress that we made, including liberal democracy, including the fact that you are free in this country, technically, to be an atheist, agnostic, Christian, Jew, Islamic, whatever you want, is because of the progress we've made based on these values. What we are having is a contradiction. This is not about diversity. Let's go through this. Now, first things first, big shout out to Sam Bidwell from the ASI, the Adam Smith Institute. Sam and others have been doing good research on this. And we're going to show you exactly what's been worked on in terms of the portfolio of these MPs. Some of you are familiar with a number of these MPs, a couple of things they've said over the last few months, but let's dig deep, ladies and gentlemen. So, last July in 2024, these four independent MPs were elected in heavily Islamic seats. They obviously capitalized on the Islamic frustration with the Labour Party's position on Gaza. The campaign primarily focused on the Islamic bloc vote. And the point is, what have they been up to since then? Let's start with Adnan Hussein. Adnan Hussein was elected in Blackburn. This was a seat which was held by Labour since 1945. The constituency is 47% Muslim, almost half basically. Adnan Hussein won with a narrow majority of 132 seats. The Muslim vote was split between Hussein and a candidate representing George Galloway's Workers' Party. So you thought that, oh, well, it was a tiny majority, probably because Labour and the Tories were there. Oh, they were about to win. No, the other candidate who was stealing the other Islamic vote was from George Galloway's anti-Semitic party, communist, obviously, party, Workers' Party. So, whoopsie. Half of the constituency is basically now Islamic. By the next election, it will be much more. But this doesn't stop here. That was the introduction. Adnan Hussein has spoken 25 times in Parliament since he was elected. 11 out of 25 interventions have focused on Gaza or Israel. He has campaigned for immediate recognition of the Palestinian state and, of course, the stopping the arms sales to Israel. This is what he's actually been focusing on. Now, he can spend his time actually taking care of his constituents, but no, that is not a priority as long as they can vote for him because he's focusing on Gaza. Now, Adnan Hussein, his X feed on social media, tells a similar story. He regularly posts about Gaza and Israel. He's argued that Muslims make an outsized contribution to the UK. Obviously, the figures cited below suggest that they generate 2.5% of the UK's GDP, right? Despite making up 6% of the population. See the problem? The propaganda is that the Islamic migration is really helping. Without them, we're not going to survive. 6% of the population so far, which is going up, their contribution is 2.5% of the GDP. Really? Is that it? Are we supposed to be impressed? But it continues. Let's go to Shockat Adam. Shockat was elected in Leicester South. This was a seat which was held by Labour since 1987. The Islamic population is now 35%. He also won with a narrow majority of 979 votes, beating Jonathan Ashworth from the Labour Party. And the reason for a small majority is simply because Jonathan Ashworth was well-known, he was in the shadow cabinet, and he was generally backed by the normal left-wingers in the area in Leicester, but demographic change meant that they could easily go with somebody else, because Jonathan Ashworth was still part of the Labour Party, and they saw the Labour Party as some sort of Zionist party. Yeah, not even joking. Now, Shockat has spoken 76 times in Parliament since he was elected. 18 of these interventions focused on Gaza or Israel. He has also been vocal on a number of other foreign conflicts, including the ongoing civil war in Sudan and the recent coup in Bangladesh. It seems like these backbench MPs, the constituent MPs, so these are the local representatives, they're not in government, are focusing more on foreign policy rather than domestic issues affecting their local constituents. That's not really that surprising. Going back to Shockat, in October, he argued that it should be mandatory for children to learn about race, empire, and slavery. Then 2 months later, he complained that Bangladeshi migrants could not find work because of their poor English skills, claiming that this was affecting their mental health. Hang on, so somebody is coming into the country, we're not even asking them to speak English. There's no requirement, like in Germany or Japan. You can't go to Japan if you don't learn basic Japanese. Then they say, okay, so now that you're here, please find a job. And, ideally, learn English. Then they try to find a job without learning English. Then they can't get a job. Now they're upset, and now they're depressed, and they're saying it's our fault. It's our fault they don't speak English? How does that work? Of all things I've heard about pandering to the minorities and be progressive, this just makes no sense. There's no logic around this. But that's what this idiot has been focusing on. Shockat, it gets worse. A month later, in January, this is only a few months ago, he denied the idea that there was any link between immigrants, race or culture, and the obviously grooming gangs that we had. The Pakistani grooming gangs, which obviously has been terrorizing British towns and cities. He's claiming that highlighting such a link demonizes a community. So talking about a factual issue is politically incorrect. When did the Islamic side become politically correct? When did the Islamic side become woke? When did they become some sort of liberal snowflakes? The one thing they weren't before was this. They were always very, very robust. Believed in their 7th century traditional values. They never did wokeism. But now they do. Because it suits them. Use political correctness to shut down debate. Genius. Evil, but genius. Now, Shockat Adam, again, this was in January, by the way. He argued that drawing a link between the Islamic side and the child abuse cases is an example of Islamophobia, which makes no sense because we were talking about Pakistanis. But okay, this is despite the fact that the vast majority of those involved in grooming gangs were in fact Pakistani and also Islamic. It's just a fact. But this is also fascinating because when you're talking about Islam, which is an ideology, they say, racism. Then when you're talking about Pakistanis, they say, that's Islamophobia. I'm like, can you be consistent? If you want to attack us, it would be helpful if you remain rational, even if you have stupid ideas. Anyway, going back to Shockat, towards the end of January, this is just in 2025, he chastised the government for focusing on the Islamist terrorism, arguing that this left us blindsided to real threats. That's despite the fact that the Islamist terrorism is now 3/4 of the MI5 anti-terror list and the whole casework. What's the real threat, do you think? Shockat believes that there is a threat from the far right. I mean, 2/3 of the threat is coming from the Islamist terrorism, but okay, fair enough, let's focus on the imaginary far right. So, now, let's go to the next one. This is Ayoub Khan. He was elected in Birmingham Paribas. This was a seat again held by Labour since 1974. Now, this area is currently 43% Islamic. The population is increasing, obviously. He won a majority of 507 votes, beating Khalid Mahmoud, another Islamic candidate, who was, by the way, one of the Labour Party's most prominent MPs. Which any change that you have is just from Islam to another Islam. Just basically Islamic Labour or Islamic Independent. That's what you're getting. If you're one of the few unfortunate people who live in these areas that's had massive demographic change, you don't really have a choice unless you want to move from the area. Now, Khan has spoken 33 times in Parliament since he was elected. Impressive. But 15 of his interventions focused on Gaza, Kashmir, or Bangladesh. He has also repeatedly argued that Britain has to take more responsibility in all these conflicts. So anything that's happening everywhere else around the world, let's just blame Britain. Why not? Let's get British tax money to go and get involved with all these conflicts. Bangladesh, Kashmir, everywhere else that you have. Sure. I mean, we can't even build railways anymore. We don't even have hospitals. We don't even have enough prisons. But yes, let's go build maybe airports and runways in Pakistan. That might help, right? So, in October, he also downplayed the threat of intimidation at these pro-Palestinian protests, which has been going on university campuses. Instead, he decided to encourage the government to focus more resources on the rise of Islamophobic hate. So we have a bunch of radical Islamists taking over our university campuses, threatening the Jewish students, attacking anybody who might look Jewish. But what the government should do is to put more money into the fight against Islamophobia. But where is this Islamophobia they're talking about? Where is the proactive, hateful attacks that these guys are saying? I mean, it's just complete insanity. Anyway, stay with Ayoub Khan. He also argued about the fears about the two-tier justice in favor of minorities is basically a fake news. That's despite the fact that the sentencing councils recently suspended guidelines would have actually compelled judges to give lighter sentences to ethnic and religious minorities. But this guy basically gaslighted the British population, saying doesn't exist. It's just, I don't know what you're talking about. If you criticize it, then it's your fault. We have a two-tier system. Well, that's why you're an MP. Now, let's talk about Iqbal Mohamed. Iqbal Mohamed was elected in Dewsbury and Batley. This was a new seat which was obviously split between Labour and the Tories. Now, this area is 44% Islamic. Iqbal won with a large majority, 6,934 votes. Again, his campaign focused primarily on the issues around Gaza. Wow, what a surprise. I wasn't expecting that. Focusing on Gaza, not the actual area. And you still win the votes? Oh, because most people who live in the area these days don't care about the area. I mean, you've seen the pictures from Birmingham, right? This is different areas, Dewsbury, but, just an example of how demographic changes affect the actual look of the community. Staying on Iqbal. He has spoken 58 times in Parliament since he was elected. 15 of his interventions have focused on Gaza and Kashmir and Israel. Again, just like his other colleagues, he has pressured the government to take a more hard-line stance on Israel. I mean, just look after your area. The point of this is that, as I said earlier, they don't need to focus on the area because the constituents who vote for him, all they care about is Kashmir and Gaza and Bangladesh and Pakistan and all the rest of it and everything else, not the actual local area. That's the issue. Technically, it's democracy, right? Now, back in December 2024, he defended the values of cousin marriages in Parliament. Do you remember that? He described cousin marriages as a very positive thing overall, as something that helps to build a family bonds and puts families on a more secure financial foothold. So he literally supported incest because it'll be easier if you just marry each other. You're going to keep the money for yourself. So you doing it for the money? Really? So that simply means they don't even trust their own people. So, because obviously they're not going to marry a white English girl. So you're going to have to marry into the same community. But they don't even trust their own community. Saying, actually, I'd rather marry my own cousin because I wouldn't trust the neighbor who's also from Kashmir, for example. But yeah, they might take the money. Seriously? I mean, what's the difference at this point? If everybody's already married their cousins over the last few decades and centuries, then technically everyone's related anyway. You can keep the money in the family. But on the issue of the anti-extremism scheme, he attacked the government and Prevent, which is basically the anti-extremist scheme, arguing that it unfairly associated certain ethnic minorities with extremism. That's despite the fact that, again, 3/4 of MI5's caseload is about Islamists. Why is he crying about facts? Because they have an agenda. They have to shut down the debate first, and then they can fill the vacuum. So, similar candidates came close in a number of other Labour-held seats, as you guys know, which again might be why a number of Labour MPs are now exhibiting similar behaviour. A lot of them are focusing on Pakistan, airports in Pakistan, Gaza and everything else, because these Labour MPs are freaking out because they know in the next election they're going to lose to more Islamist independent MPs. I mean, technically, again, that's democracy, right? But it's democracy that's been rigged because of mass migration and multiculturalism. It's not a level playing field. It's a problem. Now, let's talk about Tahir Ali. Tahir Ali's seat, two of these candidates split the opposition vote, and they were all pandering to Gaza. Now, this allowed this Labour MP to hold by 5,656 votes. But while Tahir Ali has been silent on Birmingham's chaos with the bin strikes and all the rubbish around the city, he's called for the introduction of laws to criminalise criticisms of Islam. He basically has been promoting blasphemy laws. While Birmingham is becoming a dump, you have to focus on the blasphemy laws. This is not a parody. Now, a few decades ago, Monty Python, for example, they might have done some sort of sketch on this. Probably, Yes Minister, another TV show, some sort of comedy show or movie would have made an episode about something like this as a joke. It's not a joke. Also, I've got bad news for you guys. It's not the end. I'm continuing. This is not all of it. It gets worse. The Gaza obsession is now a symptom of a bigger crisis. This is thanks to mass migration and obviously multiculturalism. Everybody's been radically changed. A number of MPs are now focusing on weird issues, which doesn't actually have any relevance to the majority of people in the United Kingdom. And as you can see in this photo, they're not all Islamic, because everybody else is also terrified. Look at West Streeting in that photo, because West Streeting knows he's going to lose. He's going to lose the next election if he's not careful. They have to pander, right? That's the only option they see. Now, the Labour Party is now directly competing with sectarian independents for the support of these ethnic minority groups, the Islamic groups from South Asia, for example. In this upcoming local elections in May, a number of seats in Lancashire will be fought on this basis. Now, Sam from ASI also created the 2025 local elections guide, which you can check it out by going on ASI's website, and it explains the whole thing. the whole May local elections, which is next month, is now going to be fought on foreign issues, not bin collection or potholes or local parks. No, or dog poo. No. Well, firstly, dogs are not going to be allowed in these areas anymore. Dogs are haram. So at least that's one problem that doesn't have to exist anymore, right? Disgusting. Oh yes, let's talk about these guys. Now, the whole thing has already had massive concerning implications for the future of our British politics. You got in these so-called diverse democracies that politics can descend quickly into a zero-sum competition for power and resources. Now, let's talk about what's been going on with this individual. Some of you know who he is. Do you remember him? Yes, this is Birmingham's Ahmed Yaqub. Ahmed Yaqub is emerging as a prominent figure in the British Muslim community politically. Now, Ahmed Yaqub intends to challenge Birmingham's Labour-led council next year and is actually likely to get a lot of support from the Islamic bloc vote. Now, Ahmed Yaqub has been a little bit radical. He's got different priorities. And not one single priority is the Union flag or Britain. None of them. He's wearing a keffiyeh, flying the Palestinian flag, talk about Pakistan and Bangladesh, and he's getting the votes. Doesn't stop here. Now, none of these problems are going to go anywhere. This is just an element of demographic change. The Islamic voters have found a distinct voice and have now started to organize themselves against the British establishment and British society. We have to wake up. This guy, for example, just one individual, one example, out of nowhere, is getting more support because they are proactive. They are very active in politics. They don't just sit around and complain about it. They get out there, they knock on the doors, their neighborhoods, the whole street. They get everybody, they drag them to the polling station and they vote. They vote, vote, vote. They campaign and campaign. They don't just sit around. That's the difference. While the rest of the political parties are trying to professionalize themselves and having nicer websites and membership cards, these guys don't have any of that. They don't have a nice website. They don't have hundreds of thousands of members because they don't need it. This is a guerrilla campaign. On the ground, knock on the doors, talk to the local shop, talk to all the husbands, all the fathers, because they're going to get the vote from the rest of the family. All you have to do is just talk to one person. That's the system, the game is rigged. It's not fair. In those areas, you could basically, if you walk around with the Palestinian flag, knock on a door, talk to the man of the household, and we've got about 50 million people in that house, all the children, who are now, most of them are now 18, that person, that man will be voting on behalf of all of them. He's going to get all of them to vote the same way that you want. And it's done. They don't need rallies. They don't need shiny websites. And we're still busy trying to fight in a different way. Demographic change is here. You can't go back to normal anymore unless something major happens, and it's going to be too difficult to even fix it at that point, because that means more division and more hatred. Where is the radical idea now to prevent chaos in the future? That is the question. Let me see what you guys think. We got the Vikings. Thank you for your super chat. Saying just a quick hi, mate. Yes, I'm being nice to you. That's quite rare. That's the Viking, the TCTV's very own security guard and bodyguard. Ivan says, terrorist MPs, what next? They change in legislations and constitution. Because all you need is about 25% of the MPs in Parliament changing. And they could just collectively get together, lobby the whole House of Commons, and they could win, and they could change legislation democratically and legally. What are we going to do about it now? Because then if we fight against it, then we are the ones doing treason. You see the dilemma, it's a lose-lose. So if you just wait for it to happen then if you fight against it, then you're the bad guy. Cameron says, is this really why the Brits fought for freedom? Why so many people died in wars for our king and country? They should be ducking, ashamed of themselves. I mean, to be fair, that was a whole different generation, which, yeah, the current generation don't really appreciate what happened all those years ago. Thank you, Gary. Let's get some non-super chats. Liam says, bye Great Britain. It was a good couple of 1,000 years, but it's over. To be fair, it's generally just over. No, but just over 1,000 years in terms of when the country became more established and organized. But yeah, there's another super chat. Miss Cameron says, they must see us as sacrificial lambs. Charlotte says UKIP will deport. Well, UKIP need to win first. They don't have enough candidates for the general election. You can't form a government if you don't have enough candidates for the election. And when you have enough candidates, then you need to get the wider support to be able to fight using first past the post. It's a very difficult system. Until the UK goes back to God, this country will be given forever. So technically, it's still going towards God, but it's not Yahweh. It's the Quran's God, I guess. So it's Allah. So they still see it as God, but so it's not going godless, right? It's just different God, I guess. Charmaine says, many years ago at a school in Cape Town, we had a group called Page My Teacher, and said Islam is the scourge the Bible talks about in Revelations, signaling the end of days. Yeah, well, that's been going on since the 7th century, so it wasn't really the end of days at that time. You know, there's always a fight back in general. Howard says, Brits sit back and let Muslims taken over the UK with not one bullet being fired. It's a democratic takeover. So again, if you allow it, again, this is not really just about some sort of rant about people who are different. This is about protecting the Christian constitution. This is about the foundation of the country. You know, we have so many other people who are different. It's not about being different. It's not about, for example, different skin colors or different ideas. You got people who are agnostic. You got some people who are Catholic, some people who are Protestants, some people who are Jewish, some people who are Hindu. It's not that issue. It's the issue of an opposing value changing and being against the existing framework of a nation. It simply means that this country will be a different country. Now, let's just be objective for a second, just theoretically, academically. It might be a better change or it might be a worse change, but it will be different. The fact is a fact. It will no longer be this country, not this framework. Now, some people, demographic change is going to happen so much that the majority of people will be happy because the majority will be those eventually who agree with the change. But it's not really just about whether the change is good or bad. From our perspective, it's bad. We know that. That's obvious. It's the fact that it's change. And they are denying that it will change. They are telling us, the establishment are telling us nothing will change. What do you mean nothing will change? They are telling you their plan. And you are letting them do it. I don't care if you're on a personal level, what religion you have, or what God you worship. That's your personal thing. And most other people with different ideas and different traditions, they have their own stuff going on in their families. But they're not coming around to expand. We don't really see the same expansion and conversion efforts from Hindus, from Sikhs, for example, from the Jews. Jews don't even want you in their religion. So it's very hard to become a Jew. So that is the problem that we have to face. But they're just saying none of it exists. Steve says multiculturalism was never a good idea. It only benefits the third world people who come with nothing and take everything. But that's the thing. It's the third world people, not the actual third world. Because it doesn't actually even benefit the third world countries. Because their people are leaving anyway. I think that the countries will remain terrible. Instead of actually us helping them to be better with trade, and then them having better leaders and better cultures to rise up and have a better country, they keep the country terrible and they come here. And then the areas here will be terrible because there's no integration. Multiculturalism is nonsense. It literally means division. There is no unity. You need unity. a common set of values. You must be able, where is the thing? You must be able to unite the kingdom. It's not even coming out. Look at this. I'm going to take off my shirt. Look, unite the kingdom. There we go. That was just not worth the effort. I'm losing my mind here. Unite the kingdom, guys. Also, on that note, our new shop is going to be launched soon. I've been saying that for weeks. Now, super chat saying the UK is stage 2 of possible civil war, according to Professor David Betts. Yeah, people speculate all the time. Insurgent groups are creating no-go zones. Funny that the Western liberals call ex-Muslims racists. Yes, they do, which is really stupid. Ivan says this may lead to civil unrest, God forbid. People have been saying that for decades, to about 2-3 decades. Where is the civil unrest? This is the whole thing. And then there was a bit of a 10-minute tiny riot in the summer, and they were like, this is the end, the civil war. I'm like, where is it? That's what Starmer told us. Starmer said this is like, the civil war is here, we have to do a crackdown, we're never going to be united again. Everyone went back to just complaining at home and in the pubs. And the plan continues. Anyway, I hope this was, it was doom and gloomy. I hope it was informative about what's going on in this kingdom, especially those of you watching from around the world. If you want to get more out of this channel, if you're new, feel free to join our independent platform, 2C TV Plus. We've just released a new documentary called Cancelled, which is obviously about cancel culture. There's also a number of other documentaries on there, and original series and interviews and everything else that we have. You can join us by going on 2c.tv. The link is in the description. Make sure to use the promo code cancelled10. You only have 1 day left, only till tomorrow. You can use this to get 10% off annual memberships of 2CTV Plus. Use cancelled10 by going on 2c.tv. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya 2C, and we are the media.